Who is the GOAT stand-up comedian? Came to say Carlin, as he was brilliant at his craft, and Pryor was his equal from another mother, but of all the names I saw mentioned, no one mentioned Red Fox. Most of you all only knew him from Sanford Son, but that was at the end of his life. He came up in the clubs pre- and post the civil rights movement. He was also known as the king of the party records. You couldn't buy one of his records without it being in a plain brown paper bag. Blue before blue became blue, and there was also Uncle Milty. Milton Berle. Known not only for his raunchy comedy, but for also being well endowed. I'd also care to mention Martin Short for his ability to not work blue and still get the laughs. All the other names mentioned have their place, depending on your preference, but sometimes it's the OGs that deserve the title for what they had to go through to get to where they did. Richard Pryor, without a doubt, he revolutionized stand-up comedy. Listen to almost all of his contemporaries, and then you can quickly tell how different and outdated their comedy is, including the topics to their delivery. Richard Pryor popularized cohesive, deeply personal comedy, as opposed to the string of non-sequitur one-liners that was popular at his time. He told stories that happened to be funny and entertaining. This has served as a template for so many other great comedians. Richard Pryor changed comedy. Even Carlin became more liberated in his stand-up style due to the impact Pryor had on stand-up. There is not a comedian on the list that is more vulnerable and tragic. That man turned all his trauma into humor. There has never been a comedian more capable of gathering empathy from his audience regardless of what color, gender, or ethnicity they were. On the clean side, Sinbad is the greatest. I like Sinbad more than Cosby on the clean end. I'm with you, I used to devour his albums when I was in 5th grade. He's not going to be high in this list because 1. Many on here haven't heard his albums, and 2. Many won't appreciate how he was far edgier than the rest during his time. Today, he'd be considered the same as other comedians, but back then he was breaking new ground. Edit. This was like 15th when I wrote this. They might tell you you're on a non-stop flight. Well, I don't think I care for that. No, I insist that my flight stop. Preferably at an airport. I use that one, and variations thereof, at least once a week. Along with, that's not a near miss, that's a near hit. A collision is a near miss. Look, they nearly missed. But not quite. The fact that Carlin is both the number 1 and number 2 comment at the time I'm writing this should show something. I'd put Lenny Bruce on that list as well, as he was Carlin's inspiration and one of the pioneers of being able to swear in comedy. Lenny's on the list, but his body of work supports Carlin's claim to the crown. Unlike Lenny, whose comedy was breakthrough at the time but has aged quite poorly, Carlin's comedy has more than stood the test of time. It's perhaps more relevant today, and just as funny. Kind of a miracle, but really all part of his plan, I suspect. A true genius. I'm surprised Bob Newhart gets no love. Go back and listen to his old comedy albums from the 60s. The man was genius. His 1960 album won 2 Grammys for Album of the Year and Best New Artist. Was he a push at the edge of the envelope kind of comedian in the vein of Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, or George Carlin? Probably not. He just made people laugh. Mitch Hedberg used to be the GOAT. He still is, but he used to be too. A guy came up to me and said, "Sir, you're going to have to move. You're blocking a fire exit," as if there was a fire. I wasn't going to run. If you have legs and are flammable, you are never blocking a fire exit. I like my UPS driver man because he's a drug dealer and he don't even know it. Killing someone with a bow and arrow is wild. Look at that dead guy. Let's go that way. An escalator can never break, it can only become stairs. You should never see an escalator temporarily out of order sign, just a escalator temporarily stairs. Sorry for the convenience. You can still get up there. I walked by a dry cleaner at 3 a.m. and there was a sign that said sorry, we're closed. You don't have to be sorry. It's 3 a.m. and you're a dry cleaner. It would be ridiculous for me to expect you to be open. I'm not going to come by and at 10 and say hey, I came by at 3 a.m. and you were closed. Somebody owes me an apology.